I want to maybe open the next phase and make a brief introduction or give the floor to Xavier to make a brief introduction on the operational approaches, how they came to being, and then afterwards the three coordinators will say, give a perspective on how the contact groups worked. Xavier?
Thank you very much, Bertrand. Good evening now to you all. So the first thing I want to insist upon is that day 2 of the conference tomorrow will indeed build upon all the great work that has been accomplished over the past few years, so we're not working in a vacuum. Indeed, the Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network as a whole works on an ongoing basis, and it is important to consider how much has already been achieved and what we have achieved coming here. The previous global conference of the Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network was held in Ottawa in partnership with the Government of Canada in February 2018. Based on the work that had been conducted beforehand and that was synthesized in policy option documents, participants in Ottawa refined the Ottawa Roadmap. This document contained work plans for each thematic INJ program: data in jurisdiction, content in jurisdiction, and domains in jurisdiction. After this second global conference, and on the basis of the Ottawa Roadmap, 3 multi-stakeholder contact groups were established with the objectives to together explore what can be done. In total, over 140 members and delegates from more than 80 organizations worked diligently, holding altogether over 100 virtual meetings and 3 physical meetings. Over a period of 10 months, they discussed what can be done operationally to best address abuses while protecting human rights and in a manner that enables the digital economy. The operational approaches documents, which were publicly released in April 2019, present the result of this process, and you have them in your delegate packs. The Secretariat wants to highlight the remarkable commitment of the members and the constructive spirit with which they engaged. This level of engagement created high-quality interactions that really helped advance the topic at hand. In particular, each contact group was moderated by a neutral coordinator appointed by the Secretariat for their outstanding expertise and their standing in the community. They served in their personal capacity and are with us tonight. Those are Robert Young, who is legal counsel at Canada's Department of Global Affairs and coordinator of the Data and Jurisdiction Program; Wolfgang Schulz, who is research director at the Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society and coordinator of the Content and Jurisdiction Program; and BOTTERMAN, who is the director of GNKS Consult, a board director at ICANN, and the coordinator of the Domains and Jurisdiction Program. The 3 of them deserve a warm round of applause for their hard work over the past year. In addition to the great work of the 3 coordinators, we as Secretariat want to really recognize the commitment of the contact group members who volunteered to serve as facilitators for the topic-specific working groups that were established in each program to advance the work. To list their names, they are in the Data and Jurisdiction Program, Sharon Bradford Franklin from New America Foundation's Open Technology Institute, Deborah Kennedy Mayo from Georgia Tech University. In the Content and Jurisdiction Program, Holly Johnson from Columbia Global Freedom of Expression, Juan Carlos Lara from Derechos Digitales, and Jason Pielemeyer from the Global Network Initiative. And finally, in the Domains and Jurisdiction Program, Susan Chalmers from the US Department of Commerce and TIA, and Brian Symbolic from Public Interest Registry. We really want to express our gratitude for the work that they have provided, and to state here that without them, we certainly could not have reached the work of the quality of the operational approaches document, and they also deserve our warmest round of applause. To turn now to the outcomes of this process, the 3 operational approaches documents that were released contain concrete proposals for operational norms, criteria, and mechanisms, which together can help organize the behavior of actors, provide common frame of references, and guide future implementation efforts. They are to be understood as the best efforts of the members of the program's contact groups to address complex and interconnected issues in a limited time frame. They are not presented as documents that have been formally negotiated nor endorsed by the members' organizations, and nevertheless they form a very valuable contribution to advance the ongoing debates within each program. They most importantly, prove what can happen when actors work diligently and in a constructive spirit to jointly identify solutions. And we are very encouraged by the sense of ownership that multiple contact group members have expressed since the release of the document, and which really shows the quality of the work. The work conducted in the contact groups shows, as we have heard repeatedly today, the importance of the notion of interoperability. We hear that notion along two key dimensions, which will be addressed in each program by two separate working groups. These are interoperability between actors and the system that they deploy, which will be addressed in Working Group A, and interoperability between the various normative sources, which will be addressed in Working Group B. Following a methodology similar to the one adopted in Ottawa, the workbook of this conference that you have also in your delegate packs contains draft work plans for each program that build upon the structure and the criteria of the operational approaches documents. These work plans will be discussed and refined tomorrow, will guide the work of the working groups after the conference, and together will form the Berlin roadmap. A contact group will be set up in each program after this conference to guide the work of these working groups, and in addition, regular program meetings will be organized to foster communication between actors, to provide regular updates on progress, and to explore emerging issues or specific subtopics that emerge within each program. In summary, the Berlin roadmap will structure future work in the Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network, all of this in the perspective of the 4th Global Conference of the Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network, which will be held in 2021, so 2 years from now. With that in mind, let's turn to the agenda of day 2. So for each program meeting, the coordinator will first provide a brief introduction to explain the outline and purpose of day 2. Following that, the work plans will be refined for the 2 working groups in 2 sessions, in between which there will be a lunch break. And the final session will consist of a structured discussion on the emerging topics, initiatives, and the events for each program again. The coordinators will moderate all these discussions tomorrow, and thanks again for having accepted to play that role, to help all of you refine the work plan and best structure the way forward. With that, let me give the floor to the 3 coordinators, and I will first turn to Robert Young, coordinator of the Data and Jurisdiction Program. Robert?
Thank you so much, Xavier. Good afternoon, friends. It's a real pleasure to be here in Berlin at last. It has been quite a journey, and many of you have been here for the whole journey, from the snowy climes of Ottawa more than a year ago to tropical Berlin. I think the last time I was this, well, I am very happy to be here truly, and I'm going to say the last time I was this happy and this warm at the same time was on my wedding day in Jamaica quite some years ago. So it's a happy day to be here in sunny Berlin. But at the end of this marathon-like journey from Ottawa, I was charmed to arrive here this morning at the gasometer to find the last few hundred meters of the Ottawa roadmap marked on the ground with colored tape. That was a typically thoughtful and creative gesture by our hardworking secretariat. You know, when I saw that tape there, it reminded me of the old adage that with the internet and data, there may be no there. But when I saw that colored tape, it occurred to me that for the next 3 days at least, we are truly here in Berlin. So I would like to give, above all, and first of all, a word of thanks to all of the colleagues and friends who participated in the Data and Jurisdiction Contact Group over many months. Many of them are here today, and you've heard some of them speak, and you'll hear more of them contributing tomorrow. I won't name them all because it was a big group, but let me refer you to pages 16 and 17 of the Operational Approaches document, the red section, where you'll find all of their names. I do, of course, want to single out 2 colleagues, each of who facilitated one of our working groups, Sharon and Debray, for their leadership and expertise, which were so important to our work. But thanks are due to all who participated in the Data and Jurisdiction Contact Group. Their thoughtful, constructive engagement means we have ended up with what I believe is a thoughtful, comprehensive operational approaches document. And for that, I'd like to ask you all to join me in expressing our appreciation to them. It was a very dedicated group. We had conference calls literally around the planet, with one member dialing in one time where she could get Wi-Fi from a McDonald's in South Asia around midnight. I think that's dedication, don't you? Others we knew were getting up early or going to bed late to be with us. So it's been my honor, an honor and very informative to coordinate this very talented group. A few words about the work. We were following the Ottawa Roadmap, and based on the priorities that the group set for itself at the very beginning, we agreed to organize our work mainly through 4 working groups. And then in our operational document, as Xavier has explained, we framed our collected ideas under 3 broad headings: norms, criteria, and mechanisms. All of these, you'll recall, in relation to the focus of our data and jurisdiction work, cross-border access to electronic evidence. So thanks to the engagement and the commitment of the contact group members, our document contains numerous elements under each of these 3 headings. I won't try here to summarize the substance of the document, but suffice it to say that it represents our collective best efforts to capture key elements and practical operational considerations that should be of interest to all stakeholders who are facing data and jurisdiction challenges. Our document reflects diverse views and interests, and you will see that there are some points on which we did not reach total agreement. This is not a failure, I would suggest. On the contrary, I think it's a healthy sign, given where we are in our journey and given the range of stakeholders journeying together. I'm going to suggest that everyone here will find something of your own concerns and interests reflected in the document. I commend it to you, and I challenge you to open it, to consult it, to share it, to debate it, and to build on it in your own work. Before closing, for those of you who may join the data discussions tomorrow, let me warmly welcome you, whether or not you've been involved in our group to date. The circles need to go bigger, as many of our speakers have already said today. I do have just one request, though, that you find a few minutes this evening or in the morning before we meet for some reading. More precisely, before reading the entire global status report, as Dan has asked you all to do, and I believe Gail promised to do with witnesses, I would ask you to review, or should I say re-review, the data group's operational approaches document. This is in the red part of the documents, red in color, I mean. And if you are very tired, at least please read our draft work plan. It's at pages 12 and 13 of the workbook. This is the red part of the workbook. I'm sure this little bit of final reading before our discussions tomorrow will inspire you. I'm sure that you will arrive for the working sessions tomorrow primed and pumped and ready to refine together the work plan for data and jurisdiction. This will be, after all, our next map from here to there. So to get to the future of data and jurisdiction, just follow the red tape in the morning to this historic hall. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Robert. I now turn to Wolfgang SCHULZ, coordinator of the Content and Jurisdiction Program. Please.
Yeah, thanks so much. This morning at the supporters meeting, Bertrand was kind enough not to name names when he said that at one event, face-to-face event, there was a person stating that he is normally not very emotional, but feels very, very strongly about this initiative we are performing here, and that was me. And I definitely feel that way, and I think the Content Jurisdiction Group is a very good example for why that is so important that we work here in this initiative together. The content issue has been mentioned several times today, and I think there are at least 2 success factors that are important when it comes to solving the issues in this complex and dynamic environment. One is hard work. it is not just about stakeholders coming together and having a good time and signing a prepared document at the end. It is really about understanding what the issue is, understanding how fast it changes, and get a good understanding of what the issues at stake are. So that's extremely important, and I'm very, very thankful to all the members of the contact group on content for their dedication and their work. The facilitators, Jorge, Juan Carlos, and Jason, have already been mentioned. They were essential in achieving this outcome, and all the other group members, especially in the last phase of drafting this very complex document, was great, and was really a pleasure to work together. So I think it's again good to give a hand to the dedicated members of the contact group. So one thing is the hard work. The second thing is the diversity of the stakeholder groups. I think that is essential as well. When we are working together in this manner, we do not have formal powers. We have to convince. We have to have solutions that are really helpful at the end. That is what makes it valuable. And just to give you a flavor of what we are having in terms of diversity in this group, we have members who co-authored very controversial laws on the internet, and we have advocates of freedom of speech who really fight these laws in public. We have traditional media representatives there, and we have representatives of the big IT companies, which normally in public fight and have extremely different positions. And to have this group with this expertise, but with this diversity of opinions, and come to a conclusion at the end to say that is our operational approach that we want to have as the basis for the next steps, I think that is really something. And I do not know any other forum where this is possible in this time. So that are the two success factors, I would say. And maybe a second point, just very briefly, on what we have achieved. And I think I can link 2 points we had in the debate today to put a specific complexion on that. Dan said in one of the sessions this afternoon, or this morning actually, that we have to think in shades of gray and not just in black and white to understand that. But on the other hand, when it comes to legal decisions, when courts have to decide, there is a black and white decision. It can only be legal or not legal. How do we bring that together? And I think that was Paul actually pointing our attention to the proportionality principle and things being necessary in a democratic society. That is the entry point, the legal entry point for this shades of gray into legal debates. And that is the reason why, when you look in our document of operational approaches, you will find a lot of taxonomies. You will find graduations. You will find ideas how to separate specific issues. And one of the, not the only one, but one important aspect to that is that when now a court, lawmaker, someone in a company does want to do a proportionality test, then he or she can make use of that and say, oh, it's not just about takedown or not. There are several other measures. You can put context to it. You can label it in a specific way. There are many other ways to deal with that, and I think that is one of the things that makes this document already now extremely valuable, and also a good basis for moving on. And that is also true for one of the things we discussed in a working group, that is geographical proportionality. That is not much discussed even in academic circles that are working on those issues, that when you think about the geographical scope of a restriction, that has to meet a proportionality test as well under human rights law. And so I think it's important to give some arguments to people. It's really disrupting what we have discovered here. give some guidance to people who have to decide on the geographical scope of restrictions. So that is one of the perspectives to look at the things we have produced. My last point is on the impact and distribution on that. I think it's important that all of you, when you find it helpful what we have worked out, communicate that in your specific ecosphere, in your company, and bring it to all those where that can be extremely helpful. That is rewarding for all of us, because it's our investment of time and money of the sponsors that kindly support the endeavor that we are doing here. And that we think about specific formats, how to get that across to specific target groups, like judges, like members of parliament, that normally do not go to multi-stakeholder meetings, but nevertheless, they play an important role. I think that's extremely important, and next to having this document as a basis for tomorrow and following the next roadmap, I think it's important to think about these specified materials as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. And we now turn to the third and final coordinator, MAARTEN BOTTERMAN, coordinator of the Domains and Jurisdiction program.
Thanks, and thank you all for a lot of listening during the entire day. I'm between you and drinks, but also I'm between you and substantive work, because that's going to happen tomorrow. When ICANN was set up in the 90s, nobody thought the internet would be and do and have the impact it has today. And ICANN was set up as a technical organizer of the technical function, make a secure and stable internet. And that's still the core of our work. And that's what we do well, I think. And some people may have a different opinion, but together we make it work. And in fact, the internet works. I see a lot of people around me have much more history with that, and from all stakeholder groups, because ICANN is also set up in a multi-stakeholder way from the beginning. Now, what we recognize, and we've expressed that explicitly also in the strategic plan for 2020 to 25, you can find it on the website, is that part of what we do is so much related to other things that are relevant. And one of those things is that with the increasing importance of the internet, legislation and governments step in and take action to protect this asset to their society, the importance of that. Now, this may have effects, and how to deal with that goes well beyond the mission of ICANN. So we're very grateful that Bertrand has been able to set up with his compatriots this network that is functioning to look beyond the technical function and really look at how abuse with domain names can happen. Abuse can happen in content ways, it can happen in confusing ways, and how do we deal with that across networks? The thing is, across jurisdictions, one of the problems is that if something is wrong in one country, it may be okay in another country. One thing is if, as a network operator, I want to take something down in one country because I think it's not right, I may even be liable because I'm not allowed to take it down. To get some clarity in how to function this global internet across jurisdictions, I think the discussion we've had in our group of domains and jurisdictions with many people from the industry, with many people from stakeholder parties, governments, NGOs, I think it's become clear that there is scope for action and that everybody feels it's time to take that action. So we engaged in initiatives like, so how can we take more quickly action when action is needed? Not ICANN's mandate, but how can we agree on what would be good practice for us as industry, for us as governments to deal with this. And this platform has very much allowed to look at what action is essential, what action is also reasonable. Reasonable from a user perspective, reasonable from a legal perspective, reasonable from a provider perspective? Is it scalable? Please take into account that many providers in this context don't have large margins. So if per domain a lot of action needs to happen, that may not work. So how do we do that properly? So also, where is action at DNS level effective and proportional? If there would be profanity on Facebook, would we take down facebook.com? That's a clear answer, but there is a lot of gray zones beyond that. It's also clear that these kind of answers cannot be got from one stakeholder group alone, which is why it's so good to see so many of you of different stakeholders groups present, and indeed have been present both during the calls during the year and the last two meetings as well. So I really applaud Bertrand and the team for finding those stakeholders to be willing to come here, and all those stakeholders for being willing to be here and share from their experience. So we can come to practical advice, practical ways forward that will make a difference towards the future. So the meetings have been substantive and well informed thanks to this participation. And like my colleague moderators, I really think we owe it to them that this progress that we see today reflected so well is achieved. So I'd like to ask you also to give a hand. And the very last remark I have to make, Robert reminded me of that. I'm the last speaker. So come to the domain session tomorrow. Thank you. Back to you, Bertrand.
Thank you very much. Thanks to you all. Martin, as a final element, will give a few indications regarding logistics tomorrow, because the setup will be slightly different. But I want to highlight something that came listening to the discussions. Whenever you try to break silos, you naturally, potentially create others. So we bridging silos around between stakeholder groups, instead of having the different stakeholders meeting together in separate boxes, they meet by topic. And then, lo and behold, you discover that you have to make bridges between the different topical silos because they have a connection. And if you look at the connections, for instance, between the content and the data, there are cases where there is a need to find the information, the access to e-evidence, because somebody has posted something that is illegal and is relevant to the content track. Likewise, in domains, a certain number of the issues that we address are related, or that the group addresses, are related to so-called infrastructure abuses like botnets, spam, malware, etc. But there are other issues that are related to so-called abusive content on a site under a domain name. And the question is, when is it proportionate and appropriate to act at the level of the DNS, which has a lot of connections to some of the topics that are being addressed in content. But likewise, when there's the question that we do not address directly because it is handled by ICANN, of the impact of the GDPR on the WUI system, few people take into account that the e-evidence proposal by the European Commission that is under discussion and now in front of Parliament will also cover intermediaries such as DNS operators. So you see there are connections between the different tracks, and this is also one of the elements that we will make sure to connect in the future. And finally, regarding the methodology that we're following and what we propose to do tomorrow. Xavier has explained that we propose that there are 2 working groups on 2 dimensions of interoperability, and each of the coordinators will explain that in more detail in the beginning. What I want to highlight is that the reason why we put the emphasis and we propose to go right now into drafting sort of preliminary work plans for those 2 groups is to make sure that the work can start relatively quickly, basically after the summer break, around October, on those two groups that are needed, that we know will have to happen. And the goal tomorrow is to identify the key elements anchored in the operational approaches document that will provide the first skeleton to structure the work in those two groups. But I want to highlight, and this will probably help the coordinators tomorrow, that this doesn't mean that there will not be other groups if the community feels that there are things that do not fit. And second, that the list of issues that will be, I hope, validated or refined tomorrow to become the work plans and the Ottawa roadmap, they are not the final ones, the definitive, the absolute etched in stone topics. There will be an evolution afterwards as the groups consider the different topics. What is at stake tomorrow is in the two sessions that Xavier mentioned, for each of the future working groups, to make sure that people have sufficient material to start working relatively rapidly after the summer. And I want to highlight this because it's a way to help you in the discussions tomorrow to focus on what is really what are really the priorities, rather than trying to be absolutely exhaustive, because this is an ongoing process. That's the main message. And as Robert said, please, for the group that you're going to attend tomorrow, take the time to read, or at least to look a bit at, and thoroughly at the structure of the documents corresponding to the group that you will follow tomorrow. Understand what are the different criteria, not the word by word and line by line, but the structure, because this will be very useful for the coordinators to conduct the work tomorrow, and of course, the draft work plans in the workbook. With that, I think I'm done for the day, and I hand over to Martin for logistical elements regarding tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Bertrand, and thank you everybody for the patience with us and the weather. So I'm indeed the last one between you and the reception, so I'll be very brief. I quickly wanted to let you know that once we finish the session now after I've spoken, we will all be able to have a nice reception at the social hub that you had your registration at today. This will take place up until 9 p.m., so you're welcome to stay the whole duration with us. There will be drinks and hopefully the chance to also keep on networking, as this is the emphasis while you're also here to a certain extent. Then after that, for day 2, a few notes, because it's a particular setup, as you see also here in the column for day 2. So the 3 meetings will take place in 3 distinct locations on the campus that we are at right now. So the data and jurisdiction program will meet here in the gasometer. It will be another setup, but it will basically be here on location. And for those of you who have chosen or decided to actually then participate in the data work stream tomorrow, as long as you have your badge, you will be let in, and there is particularly no need to go to the social hub ahead of time. You could. There will be some light coffee served here, but there will also be coffee served at the breakout. And this is the case also for the meeting of the Domains and Jurisdiction program, which will take place in the building marked with the 2, which is our breakout 2, that will house then the colleagues there, and also morning coffee will be served there, exactly, and follow the orange tape on the floor for the Domains meeting. Last but not least, the meeting of the Content and Jurisdiction program will take place in the building marked with the 3, which is our breakout 3. For those with the badge, feel free to go directly there. No need to go back and forth, despite how nice it could be. Then in the evening, there will be another reception, but before that, there will be a seated lunch that will take place at the social hub for everybody of the different programs. So that's the chance again to mingle, also to exchange some thoughts, because it's the one opportunity together with the reception in the evening where we have a little bit of a bridge built between the different tracks and try to allocate time. And the reception in the evening that I've now mentioned twice will be a different one to the one we have today. Given the weather and the circumstances, we'll try to have a barbecue tomorrow. So for those of you here saying, I've seen one reception, why should I go for the second? The second is also nice, and we hope you then can enjoy yourselves after a very intense and hopefully successful day. And finally, on day 3, and this is really the last that I'm saying, is the registration for those who, I mean, not relevant for us, will actually move to our spot 2, because we will then all not have the need for the other location any longer, including all the cloakroom and the catering and the morning and farewell coffee. So long story short, throughout the 3 days, you'll see the whole location. And if you have the feeling you get lost or this was, too complicated, the whole team and our lovely support staff are also at your disposal to guide you in addition to what we just said. So with this, thank you very much for the long day, and we are looking forward to welcoming you at the reception right now.